Hello and welcome to Story X Story, the podcast by My Matter that dives deep into stories across pop culture, plus gives you advice on creating your own. It's episode 188, and I'm your co-host, Nigel.
I am Tazziii, content creator and co-host.
And for our behind the story episodes, we like to talk to creative professionals and practitioners across industries to unpack their journeys. And today, we're going to hear the story behind designer, cartoonist, and co-organizer of WIP Comics, Mike Armstrong. Mike, welcome to the show.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for spending some time with us and digging into like your process and the work you do and your Kickstarter, which we're going to get into. So for listeners of the show, don't forget that you can subscribe to Story X Story wherever you get your podcast from, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also send us your feedback and questions in several ways. You can send us a voice message on our Spotify for Podcasters page. You can email us at studio77@mymatter.com, or you can throw your thoughts at us on social media. We are at MyMatter on Twitter, at MyMatterTV on Instagram and TikTok, or Life of a W Gamer on Instagram and TikTok, or Tazziii on Twitter. You can also join our Studio 77 Discord to be part of the My Matter community and consider becoming a Studio 77 member to support the work that we do at My Matter. And speaking of, before we get to learn more about our guest, let's update you with the latest from the My Matter universe. So it's going to be a Kickstarter heavy episode, and we also have a Kickstarter that is in the work. Well, we did the Kickstarter, so that's past tense. So we did a Kickstarter and we're working on the actual comic. So long-time listeners will know we had the Kickstarter for our Origins Against All Odds story earlier in the year. And it's a story that features Tazziii as a character in the My Matter universe, for a reflective, hope-filled manga about pursuing your creative career goals in the face of resistance and doubters from the world around you. So the Kickstarter was successful, thankfully, and also delayed, unthankfully, if that's a word. But so we are behind the original schedule, but this month we are starting the artwork for it. So soon we'll be able to show the pages, other bits of artwork as we put it together. So the story is in a good place. It's been an interesting process. It's been the first one where we've been able to let some of our young people and showrunners input on the story and feedback and integrate those considerations into it. We've spoken before about the cover has been done by past interns and work experience young people. So it's been very much a collaborative effort. I mean, all of our stories are in some ways a collaborative effort, but this one also. So yeah, looking forward to bringing that out. And in the meantime, you can also check out the titles from our manga universe, which have already been done. So we've got Samurai Chef, Hot Lunch, Serious, and Serious Through the Fog, which are all available online. So you can check those out while you wait for the latest title. And as we also work on the story from a manga perspective, we're also doing the Do I Look Like a Gamer campaign, which is in its third year. And it's a campaign to promote inclusion and diversity in the video games industry, as well as showcase pathways into games for young and aspiring talent. So it's a yearly initiative, and that means each year we take a new snapshot of 40 players and makers to showcase representation that does exist, to inspire future generations of diverse talent, and it also means a new schedule of events and activities. So we have done quite a bit so far this year. So we've done our Games Industry Explained at King's headquarters. I've been to Barclays. We've been at Comic-Con showcasing the campaign. We've done our Cupcake and Gamepad Social, which is our networking event as part of the campaign. That was at Samsung KX. We are looking forward to our Game Jam event. And then at the end of the year, we'll have our end of campaign live stream summit. So yeah, got a lot to come. So check the website for the date. As we record, we're still looking to pin down the date for our Friends and Family Game Design Jam. That will be a single day event to introduce young people, aspiring game developers to the concepts, the fundamentals of video game design by using low-tech methods. So it's all about tabletop games and working together as a group to make a game based on a theme and a brief that we set for the day. So definitely one for everyone to take part, all members of the family, friends as well. In October, we'll be at the Festival of the Girl, which is happening on the 5th and the 6th. So it's a weekend event. We'll be bringing our manga, and the Do I Look Like a Gamer campaign. We'll be running some activities over the 2 days at the Islington Business Design Centre. So that'll be a first time for us, but it's all about encouraging young girls aged 7 to 11 or thereabouts into the different types of industries, like careers, and just exposing them to different sorts of things. So we want to bring that video games representation. So we'll be there throughout the 2 days. And yeah, want to thank Rocksteady Studios for their sponsorship of the campaign for another year, because their support has been instrumental in bringing together the campaign and just allowing us to make an impact on the people that take part in the campaign, but also the team that help bring it together. So their commitment over the years has allowed us to play a significant part in inspiring young people from underrepresented groups and driving that progress in the games industry. So look forward to continuing to work with them and other studios like them as we go for shaping a more inclusive and diverse future for gaming. Over on Twitch, we have our Studio 77 activities, which is our digital platform where we talk to different people across creative industries and also play games for your amusement. So we speak to people from comics, video games, animation, and each month we have a bunch of different shows. So we do the Studio 77 report, where Tazziii and I recap the latest Mad announcements and event news and a live recording on Twitch, and an edited version goes up on YouTube later. So you can watch the live version, see all the sort of behind the scenes and our random conversations. I feel like we might have to rename it to Random Conversation Hour with Nigel and Tazziii.
Random conversations with, I don't know, there was something.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
What?
that's basically how it goes. just like that. We also have casual conversations with comic creators, where each month I speak to a different comic creator about the craft of making comics. It's usually on the first Tuesday of each month, but the next one, episode 28, will actually be on a Wednesday. So it's going to be on the 4th of September, which I'm pretty sure is a Wednesday. And that will be with Tazio Bettin, who I met at the Malta Comic Con, and had a good conversation there. So we'll continue that live on stream from 7:30 p.m. and then it will be available on VOD 14 days after that. And then we have our games night, which I believe we're going to have to shift that date as well. So we might have to shift that into September, I guess. Maybe we'll work that out again. Usually at the end of each month, we play games with our community. But the schedule can change depending on the schedule, like literally on the schedule. So I think that one's going to change. But follow us on Twitch, and you can catch the alerts when we update the schedule, and then when we go live as well. And then follow us on socials, and we'll give you a heads up there. And if you're a young, aspiring creative professional, or you know one, you can check out the Mad Showrunners Work Experience program. So we are creating opportunities for young people aged 16 and up to work with our team across comic production, events, and content creation. And as I mentioned, with the new comic, we've had a number of young people being able to input on the story in really creative and impactful ways. So and I feel like the comic will be a great example of what young people can do when given the opportunity. So we'll be able to showcase that when that's out. So if you're interested in being part of things like that, email us showrunners@mymatter.com to find out more. So now you're all caught up with the My Matter brand. Let's talk with our guest. Mike Armstrong is a designer and cartoonist based in Suffolk and one of the co-organisers of WIP Comics. So he's currently working on the new WIP anthology, Tall Tales and Short Stories, which is due for release later this year, and currently, as of recording, funding on Kickstarter. So Mike, listeners of the podcast will know, and just those who follow us in general will know, that creativity is really important to us. So our first question, we always start with this: what does creativity mean to you?
Well, humans are, like, by definition, a creative species, right? One of our earliest forms of communication is storytelling, whether it's verbal or pictorial or anything like that. So we're hardwired to create, to shape our environment, to tell stories. And I think that vein runs through everybody, whether or not they realize it and whether or not they choose to exercise their creativity is dependent on their environment. If they get the chance to do it, some people are in jobs that they don't think are very creative, but they involve creative problem solving, for example. And then you have other people who just have this insane desire to tell stories and make stuff up and just really share their own little worlds that they've put time and thought into with other people and make other people feel something, whether it's make them laugh by telling jokes or by drawing comics that are funny, or make them feel powerful emotions with their own sort of autobiographical comics or comics that have a very clear message, or just with horror comics make people feel very uncomfortable, I guess, because feeling uncomfortable is also feeling scared is also a natural human thing. So it's not just about sharing stories, it's about sharing emotions and making people feel something and showing them a different point of view. And when you, well, at least for me, when I got into it, I kind of got addicted to it, and just making people feel something in their day to day is why I continue to make comics.
Yeah, no, I feel that like emotional connection is really important. I was thinking about that recently, about just the stories that we tell and what really resonates with people is like ultimately that emotional connection. So I definitely get that, feel that. So I mean, because we're going to be talking about the Kickstarter, I know that WIP Comics has. I mean, you've done multiple Kickstarters now, but particularly one last year, which I remember speaking to your team and Lara in particular about. So from what I understand, this is like in terms of yearly releases, it's like a back-to-back thing, because you did one last year, you're doing one this year. How do you feel about doing like another Kickstarter project in, relatively speaking, sort of short turnaround time and like compared to last year?
Well, the way that the anthologies used to be funded was via grants, and then the income from the previous year's anthology would fund the printing of the next one. So we would do comp copies for everyone who contributed, and then we'd have enough left over to sell at Thought Bubble online store. And then it got to be where the printing was too expensive and we needed the money up front to do it. And Kickstarter seemed to be the best way. Last year's Kickstarter was the first one that WIP ran as a group, and it was really successful. We got the project we love, and we got lots of attention. I think we were funded in something like 10 days or something like that. It was really, really positive, and everyone was really, really enthused. This year has been a bit more difficult in terms of funding, because it seems like social media has really started penalizing external links, and the algorithm seems to be not as happy with sort of people doing crowdfunding stuff. Like I was looking at the stats for the Kickstarter, and it seemed like we have about 12, 13 people who have backed it out of 92 who have come from any form of social media, whereas before, social media, specifically Twitter and Instagram, would be quite a big portion of the backers. But this year it's dropped right down. And it is what it is. Hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, we will have been successfully funded. We'll know. But either way, we're going to try and find some way of getting these ones done, because the anthology is a yearly tradition. We try and get it done for Thought Bubble each year. There's, I think, 70 odd people in the group who have come together to make these two books, and it will be a real shame if we end up missing out. But let's think positive. At the time of recording, we've still got a week at time of recording, and we've got about £450 left to raise. So I think we'll do it. Or I think we will have done it.
Yeah, I think you'll do it. Yes, we will have done it, and we will have been looking back at you having done it. Past tense. There you go.
Time is confusing.
Yeah, time. Yeah. Time is flat circle as well. So I think you'll make that. And it's interesting you say about the social media, because I feel there are like big changes in in social media just in general? Obviously, there's been like higher profile changes, but I feel what you just highlighted is that underlying like emphasis on internally keeping things internal to the social platform rather than, like you say, external links and things, because ultimately I guess they don't really want that, right? They want everything to stay inside the platform, which makes it harder for people directing followers outside the platform to something like a Kickstarter. So that's a shame. I imagine that's got to, like, going forward, that's got to change how you think about promotion, think about getting the word out. And as you say, it's also, for us as well, thinking about how we get the word out.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to have a built-in audience for the stuff that you do who follow you anyway. Once you've got the people following you, and having a few new people sort of trickle in every now and again, that keeps things topped up and helps you grow enough that it's not too much of a problem. A lot of the people who have backed this year's anthology have done so because they are aware of WIP Comics from outside of social media. They keep an eye on what we do and they choose to invest money in us, which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, I always appreciate that when people, especially people you don't know, who see what you do and back it, and to the extent that they do put money behind it, it really does make a difference. And so we'll go into like the Kickstarter and the comic in more detail, but I also want to make sure people know who you are and what you do and where you fit into all this. So when we do our like interviews, we like to know where people have come from, and with that in mind, can you tell us a bit about like your early career? Like, where did you grow up? Was it Suffolk? Was it somewhere else? And also interested to know how you developed those artistic talents, how you discovered and developed those artistic talents that you have.
Well, it's like a lot of people. I think it goes back to my parents. So my dad was a writer for IPT magazines back in, I think it was the 1970s. So it's before I was around. And he wrote things like Flesh, which is an old 2000 AD thing about cowboys harvesting dinosaurs, and Hook Jaw, which is totally not Jaws, but yeah, it's actually Jaws, but a comic. And he wrote the Tarzan newspaper strip and stuff like that. And I have got very concrete memories of coming home from school as a really young kid and just knowing that he's working, because you could hear this electric typewriter from the top of the house and go, right, okay, don't disturb him, he's busy. He's banging out another script. And he always positively encouraged my brother, because I've got a twin brother, and growing up we were both really keen artists, and we kind of played off of each other and helped each other build our own little worlds and worked on them together and stuff like that. And that was lots of fun. So when I first started, I was doing silly little gag strips, like Calvin and Hobbes Peanuts, newspaper cartoon strips, so the 4-panel ones. And that was what I did mostly until I got to about college. And then I had a friend who I met in college who said, I hear that you can draw. Here, draw these American-style comics for me. It's like, okay, yeah, it's a bit of a style shift, but I'll give it a go. And, oh, my word, they were terrible. The scripts were okay. There was some nice ideas in there, but my artwork was totally not ready for it. But I did have a sort of a part-time job at the time, and at his encouragement, he took me to Dave's Comics in Brighton, which is where I grew up. And he worked there for a while, and he kind of introduced me to all these titles. And this was, I guess, 96, between 96 and 98. So it was when Joe Madureira was getting really big, and Image was really like the aspirational group of people, and manga was getting into the mainstream, and I discovered manga as well, and I really liked it because it seemed like a shorter journey from my current style, which was still very cartoony, to get to a manga sensibility than it did to get to an American comics sensibility. And I was devouring stuff like Battle Angel Alita and Blade of the Immortal and Trigun and stuff like that. And that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoyed. And then I went to uni, and like most things where life gets in the way, I kind of dropped the artwork a bit. But I picked up web design in my final year. I was studying advertising at the University of Luton, that fine academic institution, which is now, I think it's the University of Bedfordshire.
Right. Okay. Okay. Bit of a rebrand there.
Yeah, yeah. I went back a few years ago, and everything I knew it was like bulldozed. It was all gone. But I picked up web design, and my first thought was I can make a website to put my silly drawings on. So I did that, and that kind of became a career. After university, I realised I could more easily get a job doing web design than I could doing comics. So the artwork kind of really slid off to the side. Apart from when I was doing websites for schools who wanted little animated characters and stuff like that. So I learned a bit of animation, and I was doing all of that stuff there. And that went on. I got married. I had a family, and then I had this artistic urge that sort of suddenly resurfaced during COVID, and I really wanted to get back into comics. So I started doing this. It was another sort of gag style thing based on the video game Sea of Thieves called Skeleton Crew, and I did that for a good few years, and then just to get myself back into drawing, and then I started doing something that was longer form, and I wanted to get more feedback on it. So it was a graphic novel type thing, and I looked on Meetup for comic groups, and the best one I could find was WIP Comics, which was London based, but they were Zoom. They were doing stuff on Zoom ever since the pandemic, and the terrible disease, and everyone being shut inside, and they just kept doing it online because it meant more people could come, because otherwise it was in person in London, and it was a bit, you had to be in London really, or have very close transport links to get there. And being in Suffolk at that point, London's a bit, it's not too bad from where I am now, but from where I was before, it was a bit of a stretch. But having the Zoom meetings was absolutely brilliant, and I found loads of lovely like-minded people, and got involved with the anthology 2 years ago. So it wasn't, last year's was Change, and the year before that was WIP XL, which was like a big tabloid sized.
Yeah, the newspaper style one.
Yeah. And I kind of cheekily got in there straight away, and turned out something that I was actually really pleased with. It got me on the radar of Andy Oliver over at Broken Frontier, and that made him pick me for some reason as one of the 6 to watch for this year, which has been lovely.
Nice.
I've had some nice conversations with Andy because of that, as well as other people in the 6 to watch group throughout the years. There's this own sort of chat that we've got going on, and it's lovely. It's it's opened doors to another community that I'm really happy to be a part of.
It is cool to see that word community, and when you do something, I think it's for anything, but particularly like when it's creative careers or creative endeavors where you're doing something, and I mean, it sounds like you've had that family support in terms of like having like literally family that were in this. But I know for some people they don't always have that, so you can be in situations where you're doing stuff and it's like, am I the only one who likes, supports, cares about this thing? And then you find a group and it's like, oh, there's multiple people and we've had similar experiences. So I imagine that was quite, even though you were like already doing it, and like I said, you had the family support, but just really affirming to find a group like WIP Comics and be part of something that you all create together.
Yeah, I mean, being part of a collective like that where we lift each other up is what we do. It's fantastic. Like everyone's game gets elevated by the feedback that we get from the rest of the group. And like I know that the stuff that I've done for the anthologies over the last couple of years, and the work that I've done for my own project is infinitely better by getting advice and feedback from people from within WIP Comics, either in the monthly sort of informal meetups that we have where people just come along and talk comics, And we also have a creating comics session at the end of every month, which is more on the nuts and bolts of creating comics. So we had Rob Jones, professional letterer, who's also a member of the group, do a presentation a couple of months ago, and that was really, really cool. People really loved getting some pro letterer insight into their work, because it's one of the areas that a lot of people struggle with is lettering, and bad lettering can sink an otherwise really, really well done comic. So giving people just a little bit of knowledge about it is really invaluable. And that's what I like about WIP, is that there's 250 odd people in the group, and they're all sharing just little nuggets of information, little nuggets of knowledge here and there, just to make everyone's stuff better. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I feel that. And is there like because I imagine in a group, because you get to see other people's work, and especially with an anthology, because sometimes I'll see someone else's work and you'll have that voice inside where someone does something really good and you'll be like, wish I had done that. Now I'm gonna have to rethink what I do and improve it and get to that. Do you ever have that kind of moment?
Yeah. Well, the big businesses. Oh, sorry. The big business strip that I did for WIP XL, the punchline was originally different, and it was through people saying, "Oh, I would do this, this, and this." So that's actually a really good idea. I'm going to steal. I'm going to steal that. But there's also sort of kind of a friendly rivalry, I guess. We try and not outdo each other, but sort of push ourselves to push the group.
Yeah.
And I was chatting to one of the group yesterday, and we were talking about a script that he's writing, and I made a throwaway comment about seagulls, and he says he's going to steal it. So he's So it's just little things about that. Working on comics can be really, really lonely, and having a group of people that you know is going through the same thing and is having the same experience as you, but is only on the end of a Discord screen is really, really good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's good that you found that path, that group. I want to go back to, you were saying did you say you studied advertising?
I did, yes.
Okay, so was there like another version of life where you go into advertising? Interestingly, I was just talking to someone, not just, but recently talking to someone who works in advertising, and she was saying about she used to work at a big advertising agency, hated it, egos and all that, and then worked at a smaller one, which is better, but still like not ideal. Like, yeah, is that where you would have been had it not been for this comics path?
It's possible. I kind of realised about 2.5 years in to my 3-year degree that I didn't want to go into advertising, which was an interesting inflection point. But it was the having to compromise my morals that really stuck. We were talking, I think, about tobacco advertising. I thought suddenly you're not going to be in control over who you have as a client necessarily. So you have to think whether whether your morals are flexible enough to allow it. And I couldn't bring myself to do it. So I finished my degree, and then I went abroad to live with my dad and my stepmom in the Middle East for 6 months. And during that time, I sort of really doubled down on the web design stuff. And I'm kind of glad I did, because coming at it from a comics perspective was really, really useful, because I had the storytelling knowledge from comics, right? And that was beneficial not only in talking to clients and trying to paint a picture for them about how you would make this website and how the website would function, but it also meant I wasn't afraid of picking up a pencil or a pen and drawing stuff out for them, and doing little animatics for them if they wanted animation, I could do them a little animatic to show them what the finished thing was going to look like. And that was really, really helpful. And being a visual thinker, probably through the youthful days spent drawing comics during school holidays for 12 hours, meant that I could, when I was coding from someone else's design, I could look at the design and go, right, I know exactly how I'm going to turn that into code. So it was going back to what I was saying earlier about creative problem solving. That's what my day to day is, because I'm still a software engineer by day, and it's all about creative problem solving and being able to use your brain in that way, being creative, even though you're just writing lines of text to tell a computer to do something. Having that creative mindset is really, really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, sort of you're preaching to the choir almost, because as a former software engineer myself and someone making comics, you can see how you can like merge those two things together. And it's funny how, you only really get this when you look back. So it's like a hindsight thing, but all those different experiences add up to make the talent that you have and the way you apply it today. And sometimes you don't realize until you're already in it. You go, oh, that thing that I did however many years ago, actually that makes me unique in this way. So it's cool to hear how you've had those different stops on your journey. I wonder if when you were starting out on your journey, was there like a good piece of advice that someone else gave to you when you started, and did you follow it?
Well, there were two pieces of advice that really stuck with me. One was always do your lettering first. So
Okay.
when you're laying out your pages, and this really goes back to doing like little 4-panel comics, you don't have a lot of room for artwork if you want to put any text in there at all, really. So if you put the text in first, you know exactly how much room you've got left for visuals to tell your joke. And the same goes for doing a full page of artwork. If you're in a position to even just do draft lettering, just sketch it out as you're drawing, making sure that you leave the space for the lettering by putting it in yourself if you can makes everyone's life so much easier, and it helps you design the page because the lettering is an integral part of the page. It helps guide the user's eye through it, and if you are making sure that you're leaving the space in the right places throughout the page to help draw the reader's eye through, then you make your letterer's life easier, and you also make your page composition a lot better.
Right.
So that was one piece of advice, and the other piece of advice came from my dad. And I was writing one of my first 24-page comics, and I showed it to him, and I remember that he nodded, and he said to me, "Okay, so how many cliffhangers do you have?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean? I've got one cliffhanger, right? It's right at the end of the issue." He said, "No. If you've got a 24-page comic, you've got at a minimum 11 cliffhangers. You've got to make the reader want to turn the page. Once they've turned the page, they're captured for that double page spread. But at the end of that right-hand page, they have to want to turn it and find out what happens next. If they don't do that, you've lost them, and they'll go on to something else." And that really stuck with me. And I've been reading a lot of comics and seeing how they structure the page, and seeing how in a lot of places, at the bottom of almost every page, you've got a mini cliffhanger, like how's someone going to react to something that's just been said? Has someone just burst onto the scene? It doesn't have to be like big action-packed cliffhanger, like oh my god, he's actually her brother who or anything like that. It doesn't have to be anything big like that. It just has to be enough that the reader wants to keep going. And you'd be surprised how often that's not the case in professionally published work, where it's actually quite lazily paced. You get a lot of filler issues and stuff like that, and filler pages which don't advance the story at all and don't make the reader want to keep reading, and you can feel the loss in energy. It's really strange when you start looking at it with a critic's eye, what you can see.
Oh wow, I'm gonna take that. That's gonna stick with me now.
That really does like a good idea. I'm just thinking about like even novels and stuff and realizing, oh yeah, the books that really keep me reading are the ones that like at the end of the chapter at least you're like, wait, what?
Mm. It's that unresolved tension that you need to keep it like, oh, gotta figure out how that resolves itself. Gotta keep reading or watching or playing. Yeah, that's really good advice. I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna take that and run with that. Okay, so we can talk more about the Kickstarter and the story and see how that's been put together. So you mentioned you are currently kickstarting another anthology, and I know each time you have a different theme. So you've got the theme tall and short, am I right? And
Yeah.
2 different books now.
Yeah, last year we kind of got everyone into one volume, and it was a pretty big book, and it was pretty heavy. And one of the things that people who were manning the WIP Comics tables at conventions were noticing was that people would pick up the book and go, "Oh, yeah, that's hefty. That's £15. That's a bit too much," and will put it down because they've only got so much to spend. And so at the beginning of every year, we have a vote on various different theme suggestions that people within the group come up with. And there's normally a joke one like horses or bicycles or hands or crowd scenes and stuff like that. All the stuff that the artists really hate drawing. But we also have other ones. There were a couple of really nice ideas about WIP You Were Here. So holidays and geography and islands and stuff like that. That came a very close second in the vote. But we knew we wanted to split the books up into 2 so that they wouldn't be too big of a purchase for someone. So even if they didn't have budget for both of them, they could pick one up. And that would be at least some of the members' work getting in front of someone's eyes who might not normally have seen it. But we split them up, and we try to do something different every year. So this year we've done they're both A5 landscape books, so they're bound along the short edge. With the short stories one, everyone has got at least one double page spread. It's either 2 pages or 4 pages, and we've got people who are treating it as one really, really wide canvas, or for short stories, or for tall tales. It's flipped so that you open it and the top page and the bottom page are facing each other, and you've got the spine in the middle, and you read down the page, and we've got a couple of really nice submissions with really, really tall canvases, and it's really fun seeing how people have taken the shape of the canvas and done something unique with it. So some people, like me, because I'm lazy, have just done like 4 separate individual pages that still sort of fit together nicely. And some people have done this whole treatment of their double page spread, so it looks really, really nice and tells one story all the way down, and it looks fantastic. I'm really privileged to be laying the books out and designing them as well, so I get to see all of these really cool comics coming in before anyone else does. I
Right.
get to put them together like making a mixtape, like making sure the tone follows correctly and the artwork's not going to bleed each other out when it's printed. If there's like a black and white one on the back of something that's really super saturated and colourful, you're going to be able to see some of the colour bleeding through the page a little bit. But planning to sort of minimize that as much as possible. So picking the order of all the strips and stuff, and doing all the covers and things like that. Not the cover illustration, that's done by Claudia, who's a very talented artist, and she's done the covers so they link together. So you can put the 2 books side by side and they form one image, which is really nice.
Right. And is this the first time that you had that role for an anthology, or this anthology?
Yeah, this is the first time I've done an entire book. I've worked on sort of covers, and I was laying out my own graphic novel in as a sort of a piece of print design as well. So it's not my first time doing print design full stop, but it's my first time doing the anthology book. Normally Joe Stone does them, but he needs a bit more time to work on his own stuff, because WIP has a habit of taking over your life if you let it, and he wants time to be able to do his own thing, which is totally understandable. I mean, he's been organising WIP for, I think, 6-7 years now, so that's an awfully long time. And there's a group of us who help him out by taking over organising the monthly meetups and the creating comic stuff and doing the anthology work. He's still very much the face of WIP Comics, because he's quite well known in especially in sort of the London indie comic scene. So we're happy to ride on his built-in popularity. But yeah, so I'm doing the print design and getting all the PDFs and stuff ready for print, and then for our Kickstarter backers. Yeah, it's been lots of fun. I've really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah. And are there any particular challenges in that process? Because you described how you've got the theme beginning of the year, you got the Kickstarter campaign in the summer, and then you're printing Thought Bubble at the end of the year. And this year in particular, you've got a lot more artists contributing. Do you find that there have been any additional challenges, or just like, bigger challenges that have already existed in that process?
Yes. No, it's normally the stuff that so Joe would deal with year on year, and now it's my turn. And it's referred to as being the official WIP cat herder.
Oh,
because
yeah.
you can tell these artists that there's a hard deadline, and they go, yeah, I'll get it done. Then you get naming no names. You get some people going, oh, not going to be able to finish on time. Can I have an extra couple of weeks? Of course. No, it's fine. Like, it's been fun. I've had surprisingly few people had to drop out, which is good, because it's an awfully long commitment. You sign up in January saying, yes, I want to do this, and then by the time July rolls around, you realise, oh, I haven't started, and now I've got like 4 weeks to do 4 pages, and I don't even have a story. And it's easy to go, oh yeah, I'll do it later.
Oh, yeah. It's so easy.
I got my entry finished in I think April, because I knew that if I didn't, it would just be haunting me for the rest of the year. So I got it done nice and early. But yeah, I've got about 30% of all of the submissions now, with a week to go. By the time this comes out, of course, it'll be like 2 days until the deadline. So of course I will have 90% of all the artwork, if the time traveling eardrums of the WIP Comics people can hear me. But yeah, it's been good. Like, people have been communicative. They let me know if there's any delays. They go on the Discord for feedback, and yeah, there's been very few people turn around and say they can't do it after all, which is great. I think we've only had to cut 4 pages out of each book from the original plan, which is really astounding.
Yeah.
At this time of the project, yeah.
Mm.
Pretty good. It's going smoothly. I've got my print documents set up, and when I get new submissions in, just make sure they match the size, and literally drag and drop them in, update a text field, then sort of reorder the comics if I need to. So it's nice, and I tried to do a lot of work at the beginning of it to make my life much easier.
Yeah, that's the way. That's definitely the way. Get that. At least get the basics or the plan in place, and then you can, when it gets all hectic, you can at least fall back on the plan and just do what you plan to do from the beginning and go in that automatic. But I feel you on the herding cats. Although I can't really judge, because our Kickstarter is late, because I put down a date, fully thought we could hit that, and then the year was the year, and then other things took over. So yeah, I definitely appreciate and understand both sides of that.
Yeah, well, life happens, doesn't it? It would be pretty boring if life didn't get in the way sometimes.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah. And I mean, in that group, that large group that you've got, I imagine there's a mix of people who have done this before in terms of either specifically the anthology or just making comics in general. But then, are there first-time creators in there as well? What's the mix?
Yeah, part of the reason why we wanted to have so many people getting involved is that it's nice to have a good mix of different people at different stages of the journey, right? So we've got some people in there who've had professional work published in places like the Phoenix, which is the weekly kids comic. We've got people who are known in the indie scene. We've got people who've done lots of self-published work, and we've got people who haven't done any kind of published work, and this is the first time that they're seeing their work in print. And it's really great. And I love how welcoming the group has been and how enthusiastic people are about contributing to the books. It's been absolutely great. And I think we've got about between 30 and 40 people involved in each one. And it's a real mix, different styles, different genres, different levels of technical proficiency, I guess. But it's a great leveler, It puts people who haven't had anything printed before. It puts their work in front of the same eyeballs who are going in for an artist that they know. So they buy the book because they recognise someone's name, and they go, "Oh yeah, I want to get the latest comic by X," and they get half a dozen other comics by people they've never heard of, who they might have taken a cursory glance at their stuff and go, "Nah, it's not for me," but they pick it up and they love it, and like a new fan is born, and it's brilliant, and it's like spreading this different perspectives and different points of view across the entire comics buying spectrum. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I imagine for those people who are new, like you say, getting their work seen not just by individuals, but like you mentioned, Andy Oliver at Broken Frontier, because I know he like his mission, right, is to look for that new talent. How do you see something like the anthology impacting that small press scene in the UK? Like, because you've done it a few times. I mean, not necessarily you specifically, but in terms of like the WIP Comics as a group has done it many times. Have you seen that change either in terms of how people respond to it, who's putting themselves forward to be part of it as an artist, or just the reception when the book comes out? Like, how have you seen that change?
Well, I've only been part of WIP for a couple of years, but I felt personally quite a lot of imposter syndrome when I first joined, because I'd done some research, and you got people like Joe Stone and Ed Firth and Chris Hazeldine, all of whom are sort of known, and you've got me, who had done nothing apart from some Sea of Thieves based gag strips for the past 4 years, and I turned in something that I was happy with. It took me a while to sort of feel comfortable in the company, and then Andy Oliver uses that as a specific example why he put me on the list for the 6 to Watch this year, and that was totally not what I was expecting at all. I just wanted to see myself in print and get some professional advice from these people who'd done it all before, and get some feedback, and you just hang out with them because they were so welcoming. And there have been a few people this year who have recently joined and who sort of tentatively said, "Oh yeah, I might do something," and then the imposter syndrome got the better of them, and they said, "Actually, no, I can't." But comics is a great leveler, right? It doesn't matter your level of ability. If you can tell a story and you can tell it coherently, it doesn't matter if the art isn't as good as someone else, because you are not that other person, right? You're telling your own story in your own way, and no one else can tell it for you, and no one else can tell it in the way that you would tell it. So giving people, even who if they think they don't have the level of ability that they might need to do it, giving them the chance to do it and supporting them through it puts them on the same stage as more recognised artists in the indie scene, and gives them the same, I guess, cachet. The WIP, I hesitate to say the word brand, but the WIP brand is quite well known because of doing the anthology every year. It's become a staple at Thought Bubble. There's a new WIP anthology for people to pick up, and giving people a chance to be a part of that if they want to is part of the ethos of WIP itself, right? It's be welcoming, be inclusive, and be encouraging, and help people to improve and to level up their storytelling and to level up their technical skills, and just be able to tell the stories that they have and no one else has in the way that they want to tell them, without having this big block of I can't. Having this group there going, you can.
Yeah, and do you feel that's why it's so important to show that work in progress, which is what WIP stands for, just in case anyone was listening and wondering? So is that?
Yeah, we probably should have led with that one, right?
Yeah, that's on me. I should have asked that early on. But yeah, so showing that work in progress, because so we do workshops with young people, work a lot with young people, and it's something that I see. We've seen it. I've spoken to people in industries who have commented, observed, and in a few cases ranted about young people not wanting to show their work until it's quote unquote done, whatever done means. And it's frustrating because that's not the way, I mean, that's the way it is in school, but that's not the way it is everywhere else. So do you feel that's that, one of those things that can combat that imposter syndrome of just showing like, hey, everyone is working, has work in progress. Like it doesn't just turn up perfect. That you have to iterate, build on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that we on the Discord and at the meetups that we try and encourage. Is most of the monthly meetup is actually spent asking people, does anyone have anything they want to share or get feedback on? And the Discord is always open for people to get on there and get feedback on their work. And some of it, I think some people are perhaps a little worried about the feedback they might get. Like they're worried that they've wasted their time, or they worry that their stuff isn't good enough. But we always try and be welcoming and offer really constructive criticism, and point out the good stuff, like the storytelling and the character design and stuff like that, because everyone's got to start somewhere. And if you encourage people by praising the stuff that you can see they've got a strong foundation in, and then trying to offer constructive feedback on the stuff that you see that you could improve if you were doing it. So a big one is lettering for quite a few people. It's lettering is quite a difficult thing to get the hang of, but also stuff like colouring and just using technology and stuff like that. But yeah, we do encourage people to get feedback early and often, because it's a lot easier to change the course of something if you start steering, 15 meters before you hit the brick wall rather than 15 centimeters.
Yeah, that's a painful analogy, but yeah, accurate as well. I mean, it's something that I've had to learn through my Matter Comics. I tell the story of when we were doing Sirius and we had to edit and make drastic changes to the comic as it was being drawn by our illustrator, which is like the absolute worst. I imagine, like, if you're a filmmaker or something and you burst into the editor's room and say like, actually we got to reshoot this whole thing, cut that, and how difficult that is. And then since then we've kind of input a process where, like you say, sort of share early, share often, so it's easier to make changes when it's just notes on my paper or more structured notes on a Word document, and then it goes to art, like knowing that, okay, this is a story we all understand and we all okay with, and then it's a smoother process. So yeah, definitely encourage that kind of sharing with the right group. I guess there's
Yeah.
that caveat to it with that, like you say, constructive criticism with the aim of helping make you better, rather than just that sucks. Don't just put it out on social media, basically.
Yeah. You also have to be in a group where people are willing to put in criticism or feedback, not criticism, that's the wrong choice of words, to put in feedback on other people's work rather than just try and get feedback on their own.
Okay, yeah.
Because if you're in a group and all you're doing is taking, then people get kind of sick of it pretty soon, don't they?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You've got to you only get out what you put in. So we encourage other people, even if they feel like they are quote unquote unqualified, but we want everyone to be able to feel like they can offer input into other people's work if it's asked for, because it's you don't want to be in a situation where there's 2 or 3 people and they're the only ones commenting on stuff.
I get that.
Yeah, it's a very much a give and take thing. And the face-to-face meetups that we still do, I think we try and do them once a quarter now. They're really good for that because you can get your work in front of people's faces, and it's harder for them to ignore than like a little beep on Discord.
Yeah, that's true. And, giving feedback actually also helps you as a creator, as a storyteller, to improve, because, we do this podcast, we talk about stories, we do like deep dive episodes, and it helps me because I'm looking at stories in different ways. Or when we do our workshops and I'm giving feedback to, like kids in schools or youth hubs, then it means I have to have some level of understanding, awareness, and also not just to notice like things where you give feedback, but be able to communicate it in a way that someone who isn't you, and in my case, someone who's a lot younger, can still understand and implement in some way. So the process of giving feedback for people thinking about joining like groups like WIP and can help you improve as well. So it's important to give and as well as take feedback.
Well, they say that you never truly understand something unless you can teach it. So that's a really good example of that. Is it helps your own understanding if you have to try and phrase your feedback in to someone else's level of understanding.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I mean, as we record this, the Kickstarter still has time to go. Like I say, confident you'll get there. When the episode does come out, it will be just after the Kickstarter is finished. So let's go with the timeline where you are successfully funded for another project, another comic is coming out in Thought Bubble. How would you like to see the next sort of the rest of the year, let's say the rest of the year, go with this new work? And how can people like take part in picking up a copy of the comic, or thinking about getting involved in future ones as well?
The comic should debut to the public at Thought Bubble this year. It should ship out to Kickstarter backers hopefully just before then. We're aiming to get it printed before, I think, mid-October. So it should be with backers, at least the digital versions will be with backers as soon as I have all the artwork and it's been checked over by the artists. And then it should be available to buy on the WIP Comics web store after Thought Bubble, when we've found out how many copies we've got left over. And the WIP Comics group is always open to new members. You don't have to be in London. We've got people in America, someone in Australia. We had a member in Hong Kong until recently. So it's all over the globe. And you can find it on meetup.com. If you want to join in the monthly meetings, that's probably a good way to start. But you can also just join the WIP Discord. I don't know if there's a public link for that, but if you come to one of the meetups, we give the link out to the Discord every session, sometimes 7 or 8 times per session. So that's a good way of getting involved. And if you're out there and you're feeling the loneliness of creating comics and wanting to be able to talk to people who are doing the same stuff as you, then WIP Comics is a really welcoming, fun, friendly place to get that feedback and to get that connection. And I highly recommend it.
So before we get into our specific advice segment, I want to end this part of the interview by thinking about your sort of vision of success, because I always feel like we're all protagonists in our own stories, and every good protagonist, I feel, has a goal and a vision of success. So whether it's with comics or just like your work in general, what does success look like to you, and are you there yet?
I don't think I'll ever be where I want to be because the goalpost will keep moving. But I will be happy if I can get something published in a comic for kids. So I'm working on something at the moment alongside the anthology and alongside another short comic that I'm hoping to get done this year. That's I'm hoping to get serialized somewhere, maybe, and it's targeted squarely at sort of 9 to 14-year-olds. And I really have enjoyed working on it. And it's the kind of story I want my daughter to be able to read somewhere that's not just on my iPad. So if I could get something published that she could hold up and read and sort of get the comic all dog-eared and falling to pieces, that would be mission accomplished for me, I think.
Cool. That's a really good vision of success. In each interview, we like to ask our guests to give advice for aspiring creative professionals. So we've been talking comics. So Mike, what advice do you have for people listening who might want to get started creating their own stories and putting them out in comic form?
Really, just get started. The blank page is really daunting, but you just have to realize that the first lines you put down are not the final ones that you put down, right? You can always correct it. And just getting something down and something started, you don't have to finish it. The first page that you draw doesn't have to appear in your comic. You don't have to go straight into this 16,000 page saga. You can just start small. You can start with a 4-panel gag comic with a joke that only you find funny. But once you've done it, you've done it. It's a piece of art that you created. You did it yourself, start to finish. Go and do the next one.
I like that, especially for younger creators. I feel like there is that, I don't know, finality of like every line, every word, whatever it is, just like, oh, this is it. This has to be perfect. I'll never do anything else other than this. And I mean, it can stay with you when you're older as well. Definitely know that. But yeah, that is an important thing to remind people, like that. You said that your first lines you put down aren't necessarily the final ones. And yeah, hopefully that's like freeing for whoever's hearing that or whoever needs to hear that.
Perfection is the enemy of done. So don't try and be perfect. Just get something done.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, listeners, let us know what you think about the interview, or you can always get in touch, studio77@mymatter.com. Before we completely end for this episode, we're going to go into our bonus round.
Yeah, so I've just got like some follow-up questions or random questions that didn't quite fit in. And you said that WIP tends to take over. So do you do anything that helps to balance life as best you can?
No, my entire life is WIP Comics. No, it's important to maintain this kind of separation between this voluntary group that I spend a lot of time thinking about and the like my day to day and my relationships and my family and stuff like that. So learning to be able to sort of compartmentalize and to say, okay, that's enough work on this for one day is quite important. But I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation at the moment where it hasn't eaten into my personal time or family time too much. The next few weeks it's going to ramp up, but I've got some time scheduled to be able to do it that I know it's not going to take focus away from other important things in my life.
Cool. And do you have a like go-to comfort comic?
Yeah, anything by John Allison and Max Sarin is like really high up my list. So Giant Days, for example, Wicked Things, and The Great British Bump Off. Those are all like really, really top tier comics for me. So Giant Days is about a bunch of uni students in Sheffield. Wicked Things is like a spin-off of John Allison's Bad Machinery universe that all his stuff takes place in. And The Great British Bump Off is, I guess, kind of a spin-off series from that. But John Allison, for those who don't know, he's an old school web cartoonist from the early days of the public internet, and he's really very good at humor writing. And Max Sarin is, I think, for my money, I think they're the best cartoonist working in comics at the moment. They don't do too many projects at once, but the entire run of Giant Days, they took over from Lisa Simon after the first few issues that she did, and then did the
Okay.
entire rest of the run. But if you like humor comics, Giant Days, pretty much anything by John Allison is, yeah, it's really good. I've reread the entire run 6-7 times.
That's cool. I actually have the first volume. I need to get the rest. Weirdly enough, I remember reading it, and the credits page was really interesting. I don't know why that was what I fixated on, but it's just quite whimsical and nicely represented credits page. But and the rest of the book is good as well. But for some reason, I just like the credits page. Oh, that's a cool credits page. Yeah, I'll need to get the rest of that.
Might have to borrow.
Yeah.
It's a genuinely good book.
Okay, yeah. I need to I've got like a pile of comics I actually need to read. I'm really bad at like not reading anything until it's like, oh, we're reading it for the podcast. And I'm like, I should probably actually read this. Finally, where can people find you online?
So I'm still on Twitter, unfortunately. It's Mike_Armstrong on Twitter. I think on Instagram am I still Mike_Armstrong on Twitter? Oh, on Instagram? Yes, Mike_Armstrong on Instagram, Threads as well. And I'm on Blue Sky, I think.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I keep forgetting that exists, and I have it.
It does exist. It's still there. I haven't posted on it forever, but it's still there. But yeah, I'm on socials if you can find me, and say hello, and I'll say hello back. And come and marvel at my prodigious artistic output of one drawing every 3 months.
It's all about consistency. So
yeah, that's it. It's every 3 months on the dot.
Yeah. Find your pace.
Find your pace. Yeah.
But cool. No, Mike, thank you for that. Thank you for spending some time with us and letting us know a bit more about your journey.
Oh, thank you. It's been great. Really enjoyed it.
No, I appreciate it, and appreciate people listening to this episode. Hopefully you got something from it. If you enjoyed this episode of Story X Story, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a future episode, and you can also go back in time to listen to all the previous ones. So it's a real time skip situation going on here. You can also give us a 5-star rating and review, which helps us reach new listeners and fans of story discussions. We're story creators ourselves, and you can discover our manga universe online. So all our titles are available online, including what is still the latest one, Serious Through the Fog, soon to be added to with Origins Against All Odds. And you can join us in our Studio 77 Discord today and consider supporting the work we do through our membership, and that will give you access to some video content and our digital comic illustration content, particularly as we put together this new story, which we've started the artwork for. Our Do I Look Like a Gamer video game representation campaign is live and a yearly initiative for diversity and inclusion in the video games industry and wider culture. So we've got a bunch of plans still in store for the year. You can be part of the campaign by attending our events, Comic-Con. We've still got to come as well. And if you want to get involved next year in the campaign 40 Players and Makers, get in touch. You can check out the website, which is looklikeagamer.com, and just reach out on socials as well. And as for the podcast, we release new episodes on Thursdays that include creator interviews like this one, video game discussions, and deep dives into stories across pop culture. You can always give us a shout directly. Our email address is studios77@mymatter.com, and our website with links to subscribe is mymatter.com/storyxstory. So thank you for tuning in, and until next time, stay safe. And remember, if this episode has proved anything, it's that ideally drawing comics in school when you should be paying attention to the teacher can actually get you somewhere in life. So in your face, Ms. Robinson. Take care, everyone.